Good morning and welcome to the Building Hamilton Show with Ken Bekendam, brought to you by LegalSecondSuites.com on 900 CHML. Rick Zamperin with you. Ken Bekendam in studio with us as well this morning. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Rick. You know what? Another exciting week. There's so much going on right now with the whole housing industry, creating units, adding secondary dwelling units, additional dwelling units, coach houses, laneway houses. We're seeing in Toronto, them also updating their bylaws to allow 4 units in the principal plus a coach house, so 5 units on a lot. So it's really exciting what's happening right now.
The weather is starting to get a little warmer. Does that mean you're a little busier?
Oh, 100%. We're right in the midst of construction season, right? So lots and lots of people are out there doing renovations, building decks. They're doing basement apartments. They're building these coach houses, garage, you name it. We're in the heart of construction season, right?
And if you want to join that busy season, get more out of your home and book a free consultation today, go online to LegalSecondSuites.com. We're going to talk about a host of different topics today, including minor variances, lot severances. We got some things that you should be checking on when completing a property assessment. We're also going to get into a very scary and sobering and startling situation in Stony Creek last weekend involving a landlord-tenant dispute. But we'll begin with one of the hottest and saddest topics in this community, and that is homelessness. The housing crisis, the homelessness crisis in this city is very real. We have an encampment situation really in various parts of the city, probably the most notable one now behind Hamilton City Hall, and there's a lot of chatter at City Hall on how to fix this. They've come up with some ideas. Some have sunk, some they're studying. Your take on how the city is trying to tackle this problem?
Well, so the city is getting increasingly desperate, okay? And we're starting to see that in some of the discussions that are happening and some of the policies that they're considering. Yeah. The big one being right now this advocate registry, right? That's not a solution. That's just really trying to push this problem into everybody's backyards. Right.
And we should make mention, and this is not an official policy yet. It's something that they've asked staff to say, listen, investigate this and see, what are the pros and cons. And how this would work is people would volunteer a space in their home, perhaps, to say, all right, someone in an encampment can come live with me for whatever the period of time is. And you would add your name to this, homelessness or advocate registry. I'm in agreement with you. This is a passing the buck solution. This is a Band-Aid solution. This is the city saying, hey, people of Hamilton, you help us out because we are running out of ideas.
Well, so basically what they're trying to say in a roundabout way is, hey, we need the private sector here to help us out because we can't solve this problem on our own. Right. And that's clear as day. We know that our governments cannot solve the housing issue on their own. Actually, in fact, the government makes it worse. All of this regulations, all of this over-regulation of the housing industry is making the situation worse. It has caused rents to increase. If you step back and take a bigger picture here, a macroeconomic picture here, with money printing, inflation, lack of investment in housing going over decades and decades and decades in this country, in this province, in this city. This is why we're at where we are because of government, decision makers who don't know what they're doing. They have no idea how to create housing, and their meddling in the markets is making it worse. And so now they're so desperate that they're coming up with this idea here of basically, pushing the problem into people's backyards. Basically saying in a roundabout way, hey, we need the private sector to step up. And look, if they truly want the private sector to step up, there's a whole host of great things that we can do to incentivize the private individual to actually go out there and create housing. And we should be, our governments and municipalities here should be giving cash to those people who actually know how to make housing, there's a lot of great real estate investors. There's guys like myself. There's other developers out there who actually know the system. They know the policies. They know the zoning bylaws. They know the building code. They know financing. They know what it takes to actually get housing units created fast and quick. We should be providing incentives to those people. also providing incentives to the everyday person as well to allow them to put these units in their homes, right? And what a lot of people fail to realize is that if they sign up to this advocate registry and they, are taking people into their home, they're subject to the RTA, the Residential Tenancies Act, right? Once a person is within your property for a certain amount of time, they're deemed a tenant, whether you like it or not, right? And if you really start digging deep into the RTA, you'll start to see that it is not a balanced and fair act.
Right.
There are policies in there that really strip people of their individual property rights. And so if you take somebody into your home, whether they're camping out in your backyard or you actually take them into your physical home, they're going to be deemed a tenant, right? And then you're going to be subject to the landlord and tenant board. Let's say it doesn't work out. You want to now get this person out of your home. You're going to go through an eviction process. Well, you're going to start to feel the pain like every other landlord out there who's trying to evict a tenant that they don't want in their property, who's causing issues, maybe not paying rent, what have you, right? So they're going to be getting themselves into a pickle. Not only that, with the RTA, there's going to be liability issues.
Absolutely.
Right? What if this person gets hurt on your property? Like they're going to sue you, or you could get sued. We're just opening up a can of worms here. And obviously our government officials have not even considered this, or else they wouldn't even bringing this policy forward.
Yeah. That's one of the things I thought about. And I talked about it on my show earlier on in the week is that, the liability issue, does this impact your house insurance? Because once an insurer realizes, hey, there's now another person in the home living perhaps in another part of the home, that has to, I'm sure, tweak your coverage from a liability standpoint. Some of the other suggestions that I've made and I've heard are, why aren't churches helping in this situation? Why not, designate a rec center in this community to house the homeless until we can start building these affordable or even subsidized units? Are there other solutions we can go to alleviate some of the pain people are feeling?
Well, we need to be changing the narrative in our community around landlords and investors and tenants, right? For so long, landlords have been vilified.
Yeah.
They're made to look like they're evil, greedy people who don't care about anything, don't care about their tenants. And that is so far from the truth. And what that does, that causes people to not want to invest, to not want to, put up the cash and build a unit, to buy rundown properties and fix them up, increase the density of the property and put it on the market to rent it out. Why? Because they get dragged through the mud. And we see that happening, right? We see that happening all the time in the media. And a big part of why I want to do this show is to help educate people and to bring a different side of the narrative to the public, to open their eyes about some of the root causes of this stuff. And that, in this policy is basically the government saying, yeah, you know what, we need the private sector. But I'm like, guys, for so long, you guys have been making us out to be like these evil people. Right? So now you're coming here begging us to help create housing. Well, let's actually create some incentives. Maureen Wilson hit it on the head when she says, we can't expect the public to be benevolent and be charitable and basically to give people free housing. There is a lot of cost with housing, construction, land values, getting permits, like carrying costs, property taxes, insurance, right? It's like, imagine this. Imagine you're a restaurant owner and somebody came into your restaurant and ate a wonderful, beautiful meal, a breakfast, right? But then they refuse to pay for that breakfast. Not only that, they actually refuse to leave your restaurant. And then you're forced to now give them lunch at your cost and still allow them to stay in your restaurant. And then they're done eating your lunch. Then they're staying for dinner. And now you're giving them dinner. And you can't make these people leave your restaurant, right? And then they stay there for a week. And you're housing these people in your restaurant, feeding them, providing them warmth, heat, hydro, water, paying property tax. In what society is this fair? Like, how is this fair to that restaurant owner? And this is what's happening to the everyday mom and pop landlord out there, right? And so we do need to, we need to separate the big corporate REITs from the everyday mom and pop investor, because the mom and pop investor are getting destroyed right now. And yes, people say that, oh, it's so weighed heavily in favor of the landlord. And other people say, oh, it's so weighed heavily in favor of the tenant. Well, there's policies on both sides that are not fair. And we just need a fair and balanced approach.
When it comes to those bigger, you mentioned the corporate REITs, those corporate entities that have multiple dwellings that they're renting out, as opposed to the mom and pop who might just have a legal second suite in their basement that they're renting out. Those mom and pop landlords have much more skin in the game, maybe not from a dollar amount, but if they lose bigger than the corporate, because the corporate has so many other dwellings or units to look at.
Well, I would say, on a percentage of somebody's income or a percentage of their net worth, the mom and pop investor has a lot more skin in the game. Yeah. As a percentage of their wealth into these units. So they're at a much higher risk of losing what they've worked hard at getting if there's a situation where we have a non-payment of rent and the tenant refuses to leave for 7, 8, 9, 10, in some cases over a year. So there has to be, so we need fair policies, right? So if the government wants us to if the government wants the private sector to step up and help provide housing, they need to guarantee rents, guarantee damages, then you will have a lineup of private individuals lining up to provide housing. But until we can help guarantee some of these things for these individuals, who's going to put up the risk? Who's going to put up the capital to basically when it's not properly protected, right? So I know this is a bit of a divisive topic, right? Those that have mental health issues, those that are disabled, the widowed, the elderly, there's legitimate people in our society who we need to help them with their housing situation. Yeah. But there's a whole load of able-bodied people who really need to start stepping up and being adults.
One thing I want to key in on is the incentivization of investors, developers, people like yourself who are in business to make legal second suites and house individuals. What's on the table right now and what more should be done?
Well, so we have like $1 billion federal program to help create housing. Okay, well, where's that money going actually? So like City of Hamilton here has a grant for those who want to add a secondary dwelling unit in their homes. Well, if you actually open up that application form, you look at the qualifications that you need in order to apply or receive that money. The qualifications they don't make sense, okay? And the amount of money that you get doesn't make sense. And, so you'll get cash from the city, but then you have to rent out your unit at basically sub-market rent for a very long time. Right. And when you look at it from a financing perspective, well, you're just like, well, why would I take the city's money? I can go out and get a private loan to get that cash and to pay for my renovation, and I'll be able to make way more money every single month. So it's very hard to convince anybody. And I talk to hundreds and hundreds of homeowners and property owners and investors in this city about creating these units, and I show them, here's this grant. They're like, this is ridiculous. Like, it doesn't make any financial sense, right? And so that's why we see very little uptake on these grant programs. They have to be completely rethought, we have to incentivize people to do it. Obviously, what's an incentive? It's got to make financial sense, right? And, for instance, so my company, we're building or redeveloping a vacant medical building down on Barton Street East, okay? We're putting in 22 apartment units, okay? Bachelors and one beds, okay? The ideal, unit type for many, many people in this community who are basically living out on the street, okay? It's that perfect housing type, which we need way more of. So through that process of working through the city grant programs and the different, this is right in the Barton Street Village area, the BIA, and, they have some, there's a program from the city to basically help fund renovations. Well, so they're basically loaning money out to you, at prime plus plus. And so like a crazy high interest rate. And I'm like, guys, like you guys want these units? Why don't you help, yes, loan some money to the developer to get but then have it at 0% interest rate, because what you guys are paying to help shelter people and all these other support programs and this the advocate registry, and they'll be spending money on that and studies and all. I'm like that's not going to do anything for housing. Give it to the guys who are actually creating housing, who know the system, who know the process. Let them do what they do best. You politicians get out of the way,
yeah.
And let's let the professionals do what they do best. Incentivize these people because they will be lining up at the door to be creating housing if we have fair policies.
I know you have projects and have done projects in other cities. Do other cities do it better or a different way that makes investors think, okay, this makes sense?
No.
Everyone's got it wrong.
No, this issue is widespread across the entire province.
Yeah.
There's no municipality who has a great program because this has to start from the province. This is a provincial issue. How it's under the province, right? So we need a province that really wants to be investing in housing, and not just doing lipstick service to the issue to make themselves look good. Look, it's a complex file. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of other complicating factors. The lack of labor is a big thing. We need more skilled trades, right? Like the province expects us to build 1.5 million houses, but we have no labor, right? So then they bring in immigration to help solve that problem, which is great. Our economy we need immigrants to help, solve our labor issue. But that only makes the housing problem worse.
Yeah, because we need to house these immigrants.
We got to house these people, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's not there's not a golden solution, but basically it's got a big picture. We need to stop making the developer, stop making the private landlord made out to be these evil people, right? We need to be praising these people and saying, good job, guys. Thank you for helping create housing. We as a government, we don't know what we're doing. We only make the problem worse. And so we need to start changing the narrative a bit here, and helping support these people.
Well said. You can get more out of your home. Book a free consultation today. LegalSecondSuites.com. Ken and his team will figure out an option that is best for you to get that legal second suite in your property. Let's switch gears and talk about a very sad story out of Stony Creek where two tenants, a soon-to-be husband and wife, fiancés, were renting a home from a landlord. The landlord also living on the same site. Something went wrong, and now all three individuals have died. The landlord accused of shooting and killing both of these tenants. The landlord then shot and killed by police. How does this happen? Is this a typical landlord-tenant dispute? Obviously, we don't have all the details, but what is your best sense on what could have gone wrong here?
Well, to be honest, this was just a matter of time before this situation like this was going to happen. It's the whole issues at the landlord-tenant board. The current policies that we have, between landlords and tenants, it's not a fair policies that we have. It's not fair for either side, which only causes disputes, right? Unfortunately, in this situation, again, we don't know all the details, but they obviously dealt with it the wrong way, right? And it'll be very interesting to see what happens and what comes out from the investigation about what the root cause was. At this point, it sounds like it's an issue over the condition of the property. What we don't know is if it was an issue where the tenants had created damages, or is it an issue where the landlord failed to maintain the property, right? And look, there's bad actors on both sides, right? Yes, we do have landlords out there who do not take care of their properties, who are absentee landlords. We also have tenants out there who do not take care of the property once it's rented to them. They trash it, right? And so, yeah, like I said, this was going to happen, right? And this is the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of similar situations that do not make it into the media, where it gets very adversarial between landlords and tenants. And yeah, like I said, they did add a lot more adjudicators to the LTB board to help, resolve problems. But again, it's everything feeds into each other, right? This whole lack of investment in housing going over decades, this is what happens, guys.
Yeah.
This is what happens. We got people shooting each other and killing each other because we got our policies are out to lunch. We're over-regulating the market. And it's only making it worse.
And in saying that, in relation to how the landlord and tenant board works, this is obviously a wake-up call, but do you see any change coming out of it? Knowing that we've had this instance where three people are dead because of a dispute over, the conditions of this home. Is anything going to change?
Unfortunately, from what we're seeing, as housing providers, as landlords and investors, what we're seeing on our side of the situation is that it's getting worse. The regulations are getting worse, and what's happening is that there are many investors who are leaving Ontario and taking their capital, and they're going down to the Sun Belt, down in the southern U.S. states, in a more business-friendly, landlord-friendly environment, and they're creating housing down there. And they also have a huge population growth down there, but it's a much more friendly environment. Here in Ontario, it's you talk to any sort of big developer, big housing provider, they're leaving Ontario, right? How is that going to help us here in Ontario?
Yeah.
Create housing when we so desperately need housing, but it's so overregulated that all the guys who actually know how to make housing, they're leaving. They're leaving because they're being dragged through the mud. They're being vilified, right? Wow. And so it's only going to be getting worse. And this is where, look, anybody who's listening to this, this is where it's so important for you to look at your own personal situation and say, okay, how can I better protect my family? One of ways of better protecting your family is through financial stability, right? And, as interest rates, are really high, inflation, the lack of housing, everything getting more expensive, right? You really have to look at your own personal financial situation. How can I create stability in my life? Creating stability in your life is by having multiple sources of income coming into your life. Not only your day job, but some sort of side hustle, right? An online business. I know people are doing like these online Amazon businesses, but it's also getting income from better utilizing your house, right? Taking unused, empty basements, adding a secondary dwelling unit. House hacking is what we call it. Making your home work for you. That's the slogan of our company. Get more of your home. Make your home work for you, right? Make your home into an income-producing asset. For the vast majority of people, their house is a liability. It costs them money every single month. Right. If you make that into an income-producing asset, and you got money coming into your life, you've made your life that much more financially stable, and you can weather a lot of the different storms that are kind of coming our way.
The dollars and cents certainly make sense, but when we hear about stories that happen in Stoney Creek, I wouldn't blame people from shying away from becoming that legal second suite kind of holder, which points us to you really got to go through that vetting process to make sure that the tenant that you do bring in to get that additional income is the person that's going to fit under your kind of rules and regulations of whatever you want to set in place. Yeah,
it's like look, I look at it like a dating relationship, especially if you're going to be an owner-occupied owner-operator and you're living in the house as well with your tenant. It's like a dating relationship. You really have to ask the right questions. You have to do your due diligence. I know our company, any sort of potential applicant, trying to rent a unit, we make them go through the same process as if they're applying for a mortgage, right? The same income qualifying as if they're going to apply for a mortgage. Why? Because you're basically handing over, could be $1 million asset to these people to take care of, right? You got to make sure that they have the means to be able to help, carry and pay for the rent. But so it's like a dating relationship, like I said, asking the right questions, making sure that you're a good fit, your personalities, are good together, that you don't clash. and making sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing, holding up their end of the deal, right? And no, so we do need more education out there for sure for newer landlords who don't fully understand all of the requirements and the regulations. So a lot of these issues that do come up are from people who just don't know. They don't know the regulations, right? And they're making up their own rules. And then this is where stuff happens and goes wrong.
Yeah.
But
if you want to get a legal second suite in your place, you can get more out of your home by booking a free consultation today online at LegalSecondSuites.com. Let's switch gears and talk about some of the top things that you should check when completing a property assessment. Some of the things, and we'll go through all of them on this list: zoning bylaw, permitted uses, number of parking spaces, ceiling heights, and fire separation. Let's start with some of those items.
Yeah. So basically, when somebody calls us up and says, "Hey, hey Ken, I got a space, I got a property, I maybe have an illegal, dwelling unit in my home. I want to legalize it. What are the top things that we're looking at? Okay. Well, number one is the zoning bylaw. The very first thing I check is we go into the zoning bylaw, find out what the zoning designation is. Here in Hamilton, R1, R1A, C, D, these are very common zoning designations for these low density zones. And then we make sure that, what we want to do is going to be permitted. Make sure that, a secondary dwelling unit or an additional dwelling unit is going to be permitted, right? And then the next big thing is really ceiling height. Ceiling height is our second thing that we look at. Why? Because, ceiling height can be a very expensive thing to fix, right? So we got to make sure we're meeting our minimum heights, right? Here in Hamilton, they're following national code. We talked about this previously on the show. They're accepting 77 inches for the main ceiling height in the basement and 73 inches underneath the bulkhead. If you're outside of Hamilton, it's going to be 80 inches for your basement ceiling height and 77 inches underneath that bulkhead. So very, very important to be looking at. But, other things to look at is parking. Parking is another one. Hamilton recently, has kind of relaxed their parking requirements for secondary dwelling units to make it easier to do it as of right, which is great because it allows us to not be at committee of adjustment so often for a parking related variance, which, again, has other issues with neighbors and whatnot. But there's still many other municipalities out there who do require parking for secondary dwelling units, and that parking has to be within your lot boundaries.
Right. Fire separation, smoke and CO alarms, size and location of windows. Let's talk about that. This is all revolving around safety.
Yeah. So obviously, after we've kind of checked some of those more expensive items that to fix or resolve, then we start getting into the health and safety of the unit. Okay, so yeah, the fire separation. So basically, if you you're creating a new space from scratch, and if the house is older than 5 years, which the vast majority of properties that we're looking at are older than 5 years, we need a 30-minute fire separation. Well, what is a 30-minute fire separation? Well, what it is basically we do 2 layers of rock wool safe and sound installation in the ceiling joist. Then we do a resilient channel, which is like a metal channel. And then we do 1 layer Type X 5/8 drywall. Okay, so that's your minimum 30-minute fire separation, and that meets the fire separation and a sound separation between units. Okay, that's our minimum code requirement. So we're looking at the assemblies. If there's an existing assembly, in some of these older homes, we have like a lath and plaster, old plaster assemblies. So we take a look at what those assemblies are, what type of plaster it is, because many of these lath and plaster assemblies already meet a 30-minute fire separation. So in some cases, we don't have to remove the existing assembly. We can work with what's there. The other thing is windows, right? So like many rooms in your home, like a bedroom, a living room, a dining room, requires natural light, okay? A kitchen and a bathroom or maybe a basement rec room don't require a window. Okay, so those key rooms, we got to make sure we have enough natural light. And there's a percentage of light that we require for those rooms. For like a bedroom, for instance, it's 2.5%, 2.5% natural light we need for that room size. And then for your living room, dining rooms, we need 5% natural light. So 5% of the floor area we need in window glazing. okay, to get that percentage. So no, we're double checking room sizes, make sure we have the proper size windows. If our entry door to the dwelling unit is on a different level from where the basements are, let's say you have a basement bedroom,
Yep.
we have to make sure we have an egress window down there. So an egress window is a certain size window that we can crawl out of. So there's certain dimensions to those windows. And this is all part of the health and safety of the unit. Obviously, there's smoke detectors, that we require. Yep. Bedrooms require them. We have to put them in the hallway outside of a bedroom. So you guys out there, make sure you have a smoke detector in your bedroom. Every single bedroom needs a smoke detector, okay? And then another type of thing is if you have a shared furnace system, let's say you have one furnace that's heating both units, we need an induct smoke detector in that furnace. And what that is just a smoke detector that gets installed on your cold air return, and it detects smoke that would get sucked into the furnace system, and it shuts off the furnace so that the smoke doesn't continue to circulate around the other dwelling units.
Interesting.
And so just another code requirement, but it's something that we check for. And obviously, if it's not, then we have to install one.
Yeah. Two other things, and we got a couple minutes in this segment: size of hydro panel and size of water service.
Yeah. So not only is the unit subject to Ontario Building Code, we also have to follow the Electrical Safety Code, the ESA. The ESA is a separate kind of permitting approval process from the building department, your building permit. And so you do have to work with a licensed electrician who will go over all of the circuits in your home and make sure that, the hydro panel itself is sized appropriately for how many circuits and amps that you require. So for instance, like if we have a 2-unit house, we have 2 stoves, we have maybe 2 electric dryers, we could have even 2 separate heating systems, like heat pumps and ductless split systems are very common now. And those are all electric-based systems. And then obviously, there could be air conditioning, whatever. So the electrician will add up what the loads are and then make sure that you have a big enough panel. The very common size panel we have in an existing single detached home is a 100 amp panel. Right. Well, by the time you get the 2 stoves and 2 dryers and stuff, you're going to be over that amperage, right? So very often we have to do a hydro upgrade, an upgrade to the service. Minimum for 2 units would be like a 125 amp panel. Most common, we are updating to a 200 amp panel. But it's another very important thing that we have to look at.
Absolutely.
And then,
Let's get into minor variances and lot severances. What should we be wary of here?
Yeah, so what is a minor variance? Let's just start with that. So a minor variance is when there's something in the zoning bylaw that you, for whatever reason, you can't comply with. Okay, so as a quick example, this could be a setback. So let's say you want to build a garden suite or a coach house, right, in your backyard, right? We're talking about creating secondary dwelling units on the show, right? So let's use that as an example. Here in Hamilton, we require a 1.2 meter, so basically like a 4-foot side and rear yard setback. But let's say you want to make the unit a bit bigger, the footprint of this coach house a bit bigger, and you want to maybe go to a 3-foot setback. Well, that doesn't comply with the zoning bylaw, so we would be making an application to Committee of Adjustment and asking them for relief of the requirement under the zoning bylaw and say, instead of 4 feet, can we have 3 feet, right? Another example could be a parking requirement, where we might need 2 parking spaces, but we can only physically fit 1 parking space. Right. And there's many other, zoning related issues that we need to apply for variance. So we make the application, it goes in front of a Committee of Adjustment, which is basically just, people appointed by council to sit on a committee and hear the applications and then make a ruling on it. But what happens with the minor variance is that, any property within 60 meters of your property will get notified, right, about your application. And they'll have the opportunity to, comment, send in an email, send in a letter, either supporting or opposing your decision. And so this is where, we see a lot of issues come up where, when we're going and asking somebody else for their opinion on your project, this is where we can see, conflict and strife happen in a neighborhood. And so I'm a big advocate for, common sense zoning bylaws that allows people to do things more as of right, which really helps kind of maintain peace in a neighborhood. But there, we do require public, I do agree with public, consultation, right? But I think we need to maybe limit how much public consultation happens.
Right. I can almost guarantee you can count on one hand the amount of positive responses you get to a project as opposed to the negative ones, because everyone likes to complain.
Oh, like the people who support your application will never send in a letter of support. It's always the negative people, right?
Exactly.
And the thing is, committee of adjustment, they're very similar to politicians. They sway in the wind with whatever comes their way, just to make people happy. So we do see where we have really positive planning staff reports, by people who are at the city, who are employed, who are university educated in city planning and urban planning, and they provide a positive report why this application should be approved. And then here on the other side, we have committee members who are unelected, who maybe haven't gone to school for urban planning, who sway with the wind of a NIMBY neighbor and deny an application. Yeah. Right. And this also leads to problems in creating housing.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Let's end with lot severances. What is a lot severance?
Yeah. So a lot severance is when maybe you have an extra large piece of land. Maybe you have a double wide lot. Maybe you have a corner lot. Or maybe you have a small house on a really big piece of land. Well, there's opportunity there to create a new lot and to sever a lot. And to split that bigger lot into smaller lots. And so this is really important because, there's just, if you look on an aerial map of a neighborhood, oftentimes you can see lots of green space, lots of, basically underutilized land parcels. Right. And so a lot severance is, so you want to create a lot. So in the zoning bylaw for your zone, it will tell you the minimum lot frontage and lot area that you require. So for instance, like for a single detached home, they'd have a minimum lot area and lot frontage. If you wanted to build like a semi-detached home, there'd be, again, different frontages and lot area for those types of housing types. And so basically we look at the zoning bylaw and see if we can comply with the lot frontage or lot area requirement. Sometimes we can't. And this is where an additional application to Committee of Adjustment for a minor variance, along with your consent to sever application to recognize a smaller lot frontage. And this is great because this allows us to basically utilize existing land parcels within our urban boundary, make better use of the land, and be able to add more housing into a neighborhood. Whether it's just a new single detached home, or if it's a new duplex or triplex or fourplex.
Yeah, that's certainly going a long way to helping solve the housing crisis in this community, although we can both admit we got a long way to go. Get more out of your home. Book a free consultation today online at LegalSecondSuites.com. You've been listening to The Building Hamilton Show with Ken Bekendam, brought to you by LegalSecondSuites.com on 900 CHML.